Hi, everyone. This is the Leadership with Heart podcast, and this is your host, Heather Younger. Employee experience is powered by emotions. Managers and our leaders within organizations get to choose which emotions they unleash from within the people they lead. Leaders, meaning supervisors or above in an organization, drive much of the positive or negative emotions by their actions or inactions, their words, or what it is they fail to say. When a manager chooses their words and their actions carefully, they exhibit great emotional intelligence. These managers are often thought of as leaders who care, or as I like to call them, leaders with heart. This special brand of leader drives engagement and loyalty simply by being themselves. Are these leaders perfect? Absolutely not. It is in their awareness and sharing of some of their imperfections that we realize their brilliance. In this podcast, I ask you to see yourself in the stories my guests tell about times when they were not the best versions of themselves, but how they used their hearts to guide them to a place of deeper connection with their teams and heightened leadership prowess. Today, I welcome Rob Pepper to the show. You're going to love this one. Enjoy. I'd like to welcome Rob Pepper to the Leadership with Heart podcast. This is Heather Younger, your host. Welcome, Rob.
Heather, thank you very much. I appreciate being here. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experiences with your audience.
This is going to be fun. So Rob is on the show because he was referred to me by a close friend of mine, Zach Messler. And the reason why Zach wanted Rob on the show or referred him is I kind of described to him the type of leader I speak with, of course, is the person that is, more emotionally intelligent, those that may empower you, those that listen well, those that, put you and your other coworkers kind of first. And so I described some of these things, and Zach said, oh man, I have the exact person for you, Heather. Rob is someone who really removed barriers for us, who allowed us to be creative, who empowered us to be our best and really listened. And if we needed to course correct, he helped us with that. And so, that's why Rob's on the show. So I'm super excited for this conversation with Rob. I love speaking with leaders who just get it. And it doesn't mean that they're perfect. And we're going to be talking through some of that as well today. But it's some good lessons that we can learn as well. So, Rob, I'd love for you to tell the listeners a little bit where you are right now in your leadership career.
Absolutely. So I come from the background of emerging innovative companies and growing them. Initially, it was started out in finance for 10 years, and then I went to another side of the marketing side. And I built a number of enterprises, taken some public. I've sold 4 of them to Fortune 500 companies. Currently, I am managing director of Barrier Breaking Marketing, which is really a consulting practice for emerging growth stage and innovative driven companies across multiple industries. And by doing that, I consult with a number of companies in the neuroscience space, med tech, surgery imaging, network security, and I sit on a board as well. So that's where I am in my career. And I share really my years of experience, both in the finance and marketing, to help these companies grow to the next stages of performance.
That's awesome. And are you also managing a team at this point too?
I do. Most of my team are from the company side itself or external partners, consulting partners, other partners as well. I have led teams from as little as 5 to 80 people. Awesome.
Well, that's good. I wanted to make sure we kind of knew that background before we got started anyway. So how would you define basically, when you have a leadership style or you go into leadership, there's usually a reason why you do it. Most of us are driven to be leaders, but for a particular reason. So I'd love to know what your reason might be.
As a person, I'm just generally interested in learning and challenging myself and pushing the boundaries of companies, especially innovative companies, and which I spent an entire career doing. And the way I have grown my career and excelled is really by surrounding myself with super talented individuals. And so my driver for me in selecting a company and leading teams and building teams is really focused on the core value of developing a winning culture with a great deal of accountability, empowerment, and quantifying results at the end that we can measure our performance by. And part of that, Heather, comes in what I will call building an ecosystem of dependency. So when I look at leading teams and recruiting teams, there is a interdependency on each other where it's mandatory. I say that, not that I say that folks it's mandatory, but the success of an individual is codependent on their ability to work together collectively. And, what I'm really looking to do is create folks to be high performance contributors. And I believe starting, part of my passion, what drives me, that everyone within themselves can be a high performance contributor in a one way or another. And I could talk about examples of that as well.
Well, I'd love to hear a couple of those. Let's go ahead and learn from that.
Absolutely. So, as a leader, part of our role, and I would say it's the most critical factor in achieving success in any company you're with, is your team and who you select to be on that team. So if you have the ability to draft or to recruit and groom your team, you're looking for people who are talented and passionate and have purpose and they have great conviction and energy and all the right aptitude and attitude to build your team. And sometimes you don't have that opportunity. You have to inherit people who are on the team. And so for me and for leaders, part of our role, whether we want to evaluate this as a responsibility, I think it is a responsibility that we're teachers, we're coaches, we're mentors, and more importantly, we're students. So for me, I'm driven to encourage and empower others and provide what I would call the fuel behind them. And this is really significant because part of my style is to let people know that the role they have is unlimited in their growth and their decision making. I like people to take the risk, to push themselves. I use a phrase that I live by called get comfortable being uncomfortable. That doesn't mean come to work insecure and unsettling. It just means, try something new, be different. So I remember one time I had an organization I was working with. I was chief marketing officer. I had product, and we were growing rapidly. And I had a web designer, right? Somebody who was, on the team of about 40 at the time. And I really saw through them they can actually think strategically. They could do more. And I wanted them to really create the entire digital presence and the strategy around it. And they freaked out. I remember thinking they can't do it. And I said, and this is part of my coaching and how I play. I said, I believe in you. I absolutely believe in you. I will never let you fail. I will make sure that I'm here to support you. I will make sure that you learn. We'll learn together. This goes not just with this one person. This is how I lead, but this is an example. And I said, we'll sit down. We'll do the strategy. You'll have all the tools and resources to be successful. And it's going to be uncomfortable because you're doing things that are going to elevate your career 5 times where you are today. And that happened. That person was super successful. They went on and followed me to 2 other organizations. And they work now for a large publicly traded company owning the digital strategy. And the point being that this person who really as a graphic artist out of an agency really had the makings of someone who can actually grow. They just needed someone to support them, believe in them. They had to believe in themselves. They had to be empowered to really get uncomfortable with just doing their job. They had to do more than their job now. They had to be strategic in their thinking. They had to be accountable. They had to work with others. And that person excelled. And I can give you dozens of examples like that. People just need to have a champion on their side.
I love that. That is just beautiful. I love the fact that you talked about building an ecosystem of dependency. I do think that sometimes organizations are built up of a group of individuals, and we don't, in many cases, put our needs aside for the kind of the best of the team and for the culture and for the organization. I always have found great frustration in cultures that just promote a lot of individualism, because I think that if we can focus on what the team can do together, how all our strengths can work together, and what we can focus on for the best of the team, the organization thrives more. And so I loved that idea of building that ecosystem of dependency. The other thing is, again, some of the things the way you've described yourself is how the person who referred you to this show also describes you, that idea of, encouraging them to take risks and seeing that kind of seed of greatness inside the person to do more and be more than they are today, and helping them and kind of, providing that open space for them to grow in. So kudos to you. That's some good stuff. Love it.
Absolutely. You mentioned Zach Mesler. Zach Mesler's worked with me for at least 3 companies, and he's super successful now. I would say that most people that have been on my teams at the director level, I would actually work for them eventually too. I have had a number of folks, including CIOs and CFOs, follow me from one organization to another. But Zach's a great example. Zach came on as a product expert, really. And then his career's blossomed because he got more and more responsibility, but really pushing the boundaries with him. And I remember people say, well, how do you do it with your teams? Other leaders would come to my office, counterparts. I said, look, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a door in my office. Anyone can come in. But again, as a player coach, and I say player coach because I like to get down in the trenches too, but really stand away, I'm teaching, but I'm also learning. So in Zach's case, for example, he got more and more responsibility, more and more credit, because part of a leader, this is a little bit my style, is I don't particularly take credit. My credit is the team credit. And I have found that to come back tenfold. So leaders who stand up in front and give results, often, have to attribute those results to somebody. My style is when I give results on the successes that we're achieving, don't come back to me. There are always somebody on the team who's accountable for them. And when the team's successful, comes back. So part of that is taking a different perspective on how we reward and motivate and encourage others and acknowledge others with the praise of their performance. And that, to me, is really a key differentiator, I think, in getting people to really feel good about their roles and excelling. If you take the credit as a leader, I've often felt that undermines individual performance and team performance.
Love it. You could be writing a book on this, Rob. I mean, this is some good stuff here. and some of the things that you're saying, many of the things you're saying are in my book, The 7 Intuitive Laws of Employee Loyalty, because that whole acknowledgement and recognition part, all of it, empowering. I mean, literally you have just done like a textbook of what engagement and loyalty are all about. And that's exactly why one of the people that has followed you to all these different places is loyal to you and of course referred you to the show. So that's awesome. So I think you've already answered the question on what's your leadership style, because I think you just bake that into your response to that question. And it's amazing. Again, someone who's helping people grow and empower them and helping them take risks and kind of providing those safe spaces. Can you do me a favor, define a time for me or describe a time when you don't think you were that best version of yourself, where all the things that you just talked about, which are amazing, by the way, just did not maybe show themselves up in the work environment? And then what did you do to come out of that place to really to the place where you are now, more enlightened?
Absolutely. When we have points of inflection, and oftentimes when it's very tough and very lonely at times in our own leadership experience, it's when we have the ability to stop and reflect. And I had that experience, perhaps learning to be a leader, even though I was considered a leader, greatest when I was in my late 20s. This experience I'll never forget, and I hope to never repeat ever again. So far, so good. So let me tell you the moral of the story. The moral of the story was to look deep into a company's culture. And culture can mean lots of things. It could mean the culture against people, culture against growth, or maintaining market share. It could be culture of how they treat people. It could be culture of education. It could be lots of things that involve the culture. You look deep into the company's culture before joining to ensure there's congruency between the leadership team and the rest of the organization. So this is my experience. When I was in my late 20s, I joined a very prestigious investment bank, as an executive. This is an area where I was in the finance field before I went to marketing. I had other leadership roles, but when I came to this organization, it was a public company, and I had spent a lot of time interviewing with and for the leadership team. And I made a decision based on the interviews I had with the C-suite. So when I arrived and assumed my new leadership position in the financial role of this company, I learned who my team was for the first time. Very good people, smart people. Many of them had been there their entire careers, 20, 30 years. Some were looking for retirement. Some were mid-stage in their careers, but it was a team of about 25 people. And then during my, growth in this company, the early stages, I had learned that the board and the executive committee wanted to change the direction of the company, which I understood going into this role. Mm-hmm. But what I learned was that the staff, that the folks are going to make it happen, really going to make it happen, were not on board. And they resisted. And I found myself being, in a position where I had to do transformation leadership. Now, I'm the first to say, if I don't know something, I raise my hand and go, I don't know something. And I have no shame doing that because it's just honest. And it's just, if you don't know something, you go find out. And I realized that, this role that I was in was to really be a game changer in helping the company. And, I've found out that people wanted to just come in and do their job and have a nice life and not worry about making changes that they felt would perhaps either jeopardize their career, or they would absolutely jeopardize their role, or perhaps make their daily performance different than what they've done for the last 10, 15, 20 years plus. So the change was resisted. And it wasn't just in my division, it was across the company. So it was a very difficult time. And I was new to the change management. I thought came in and people would get around the strategy. I was crystal clear on our plans and how we're going to attack them because we helped build them together. But when it came to execution, which meant everything, the team did not want to act. And in fact, I'd say they revolted, meaning that and not against me as a person, just against the change.
Yes.
And so, I was now 6 months into this position, and I had come to the conclusion after talking to, so I reported to the chief financial officer, who was aware that this type of resistance was happening throughout this large company. And, I came and said, look, I think I had three choices. I could, continue being a change agent, knowing that my division successes, if that were to be the case, would not be considered a success for the company wide. In other words, one division change is not success. The company has to change its culture to be successful, to scale and to grow. Or I was able to fire and replace my entire team, and I was empowered to do that. And by the way, that was the preference that folks that I report to thought I should do. Right. I didn't sign up for that, right? And I'm changing people's lives and careers. I have a passion. I am a human. I am a human. And, you impact lives. And I was really, conflicted with that option. Or I could resign, realizing that, okay, I made a mistake joining this company and making my assessment to join this business. I only looked at the leadership culture and the decision-making process. I didn't go down into the real operations of the business and realize that, next time, I will require myself to go further into an organization for, let's say, an interview to make sure I meet with the direct reports of the team I would lead. And so, I really, weighed it out, and I really looked at the pros and cons. I kind of did the old chart, the plus and minuses of each one of those options. There were a few others, but these were the three ones that I really was faced with. And, at the end of the day, I guess this is where my heart is. I was not going to replace my entire team. These were good people, smart people. They were loyal. I'm a loyal person myself. They were empowered. They helped grow the business. And honestly, they really did want the better growth of the company. They just didn't feel that they were part of the decision making across the entire company the way in. So they felt alienated. So I was dealing with, hurt egos at time as well on my team. Not on my part, I inherited it. Or I could quickly go learn how to be a change agent, which I didn't even know what that word was at the time in my career, because I'd always been with growth companies, and our change was funneling energy into growing our business and trying to keep ahead of, the demands that we were creating and growing. That was a change, but it wasn't a transformation agent. It was a growth agent. That was where my experience was, a growth agent. So to tell the audience where I concluded, I resigned, and much to the dismay of the executive team, realizing that I had made a mistake, that I was asked not to leave. But I wanted to make a statement that, leaving the organization was the right thing to do because, one, I wasn't going to fire and replace my entire team, and two, I would give them, insights to bring a bigger consultant firm on that can help them out with getting the entire teams brought in and bought in to the larger change that needed to happen, which is what they ultimately ended up doing. So I tracked them because they're public. I tracked what they were doing, and that's what I did. And this change in my career impacted me because I take my career very serious, and I joined to be a success and build a winning team, and I was dismantling a team that probably at one time was a winning team. And they were individual winners. I don't want to give the wrong impression. It's just that they weren't part of the vision of the other executives going forward. And so I struggled with that. And so that actually, made me very aware of, one, how these decisions impact families and their individual careers. I took it as an honor to leave versus changing the lives of 20, 25 other people in a negative way. So that was my big change. I learned a lot from that experience.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
And I never repeated.
Well, I think what's awesome about it is the fact that you did stand by your principles. I mean, you looked at you kind of stepped back, looked at what your options were, and kind of evaluated, does this align with my leadership brand? And as a marketing guy right now, you understand the idea about branding. And as a leader, we have a brand. We're known for something. We get to choose what that is. In our actions, our interactions, our words, or what it is we fail to say. And we do this everywhere we go. People are watching. It's kind of crazy. It's a little scary, but it's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
It's true. It's absolutely true. And if you want to build, so we have personal brands that, are, like you said, for ourselves, and we have integrity. We're supposed to operate with integrity and tenacity, perseverance, all these great attributes as a leader. And coming in, taking the decision I made, to me, was not the easiest decision. That was actually the hardest decision that I saw. And so I really realized that, but put back against the wall, I would take the hard decision, leaving because I had a family, I had responsibilities and commitments, I had obligations to others, but I did it. And I think in the end, to your great point, it insulated the brand I was looking to develop and lead. And that is one where I have principles and I'm going to stand behind people, and I'm going to lead by being in front, and I'm going to take accountability. All the things I mentioned earlier in this call are things that I felt at the time were tested, and which is a great thing to do as a leader, to test yourselves. Mm-hmm. And so it was a great learning experience for me.
That's awesome. That's one of those things you can't buy, because you need that for the foundation of where you're at right now today. So thank you for sharing that. Every time I ask that question, people kind of give, because a lot of it's about perception, like where you think you weren't your best, where you might have failed, where you have fallen down. And everybody gives just a slightly different angle. And I appreciated that yours was kind of, when you evaluated the company that you're going to, you didn't dig deep enough to make sure that the culture that was in place and the expectations of you as this new incoming leader were going to align with your leadership brand. And once you got in there and realized it was knocking right up against it, you backed out. And I think that does take a lot of strength. So I think that was a great story. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm glad to share. It was very difficult at the time. I assure you, it was uncomfortable. And hence, when I say it's time to get comfortable being uncomfortable, I was very uncomfortable the entire 6 months. But I've been there. I did that myself. So I live my words.
So what happens with you when you are, you're busy and your team is busy and everybody kind of seems a little disconnected. What do you do to reconnect with your team in a deeper way, just to kind of reinstitute that bond and that ecosystem of dependency that you talked about?
Absolutely. So the ecosystem is always on the forefront of my leadership. How are we balancing everything out? And I believe a happy team is a productive team, just like I believe happy people are productive people. It is my job to stay not only connected to the heartbeat of my teams, but to the individuals. And so I often meet with them on a one-on-one basis and a team basis. And I do this often. And like I said earlier, I'm a human too. So I think sometimes if you get disconnected, I think it's a vulnerability leaders sometimes don't want to acknowledge, but I believe that when you're feeling or you're in a position of being vulnerable, it's time to reach out and not recoil. And I'll give you a couple examples of this and how I resolved it when it has happened, but it hasn't happened often. I've had teams where they've been centralized in an office. I have had teams where they've been decentralized over the country in multiple offices, and I've had teams that I've had to lead in dozens and dozens of countries, excuse me. And so the further the teams get away from the central leadership, the more all the things I talked about earlier have to happen. empowerment, trust, honesty, accountability, clear, articulate plans. But when you get out of sync, or when I have been out of sync, I do the one simple thing. I ask my team for help. It's that simple. And I literally go out, and if there is, some disappointment within the organization or the team, or there's some big challenge, maybe personality-wise, it has to be settled, or there's some confusion in the priorities, I literally just sit the leadership team down and go, I need your help, on a personal level. And I seek out some facts. I would say I seek out all the relevant facts. I listen. And then when I listen, I repeat what I heard to make sure I heard the right things that I'm being told. I try the best I can to make sure I understand the issues and make a decision. And then I act. And then I reconnect with the team to make sure that, the message was heard and the action was taken based on the decision I made. Now, that sounds like a lot, but I tell you, it's the simplest thing to do is ask for help. There's nothing wrong with that. And as a matter of fact, some of the emotional discord or disconnection may not be with you as the leader. It may be that there is distance gotten in the way of understanding the goals, the priorities, or maybe some personality changes, or maybe a conflict of resources. It's all done professional, by the way. I don't think I've ever raised my voice and yelled. This is not a shouting match. The winning metric here, Heather, is do we come out stronger than when we entered the conversation? And that's the metric. And I would say yes. Now, I could tell you some funny stories about what I do to connect with my teams, and those who are listening who are on my teams would know this, but I'll give you a couple of funny stories. So on my direct team, it's easy to sometimes connect with them. We'll go to lunch once a week. We show up. It's one rule is no business is talked. It's all about our lives, our families, our kids. So we stay connected. We do have quarterly meetings and annual meetings, but this is to get the team comfortable. They have access to the leader, and we have conversations. The other is spending time outside the office. So it's not mandatory, but after hours, there's nothing wrong with going to grab some dinner. So stay connected when you can. Geographically, you can stay connected. The other thing that I did, and this is a really funny story. At one time, I had 6 directors. They happened to all be women, and they're all amazingly talented women who rose up the ranks and became the leaders of my team. And I really wanted to spend some quality time with them. And so I didn't get one, but I take them out and get manicures. And literally, we just go to a shop and, I've never been to one before, and so, it was fun to go out, and I'm talking about senior directors. These are people who had big teams in themselves and big budgets. So we did some fun things. That was a little bit more irrelevant, but we make sure we connect, and that's the thing. We make sure that the emotional connection between relationship of working together sometimes spills over to outside the office. It's not mandatory, but we have to make sure that we have the trust, the connectivity, the honesty is there, the integrity is there, and the ability and open platform to be able to come and have a conversation that's candid and true. That's what I build. That's what I thrive to do.
So for the listeners, I'm sure you heard all of the makings of a seriously emotionally intelligent leader. I know that there are just lots of buzzwords everywhere. That wasn't purposeful. That's just how he leads. Again, thanks, Zach, for inviting Rob on the show. Some of the things that hit me, you use the words, making sure they're accessible. Leaders are accessible to their people, making sure there's an emotional connection to the team, listening. And the process that you took us through when you talked about connecting was, asking, meeting with them one-on-one, asking them relevant questions, listening to them, acting on what it is you hear, making sure that in the end, is when you have these conversations, are you stronger when you come out of it? These are all things that you have to be really self-aware to even lead this way. You have to be very self-aware. You have to be able to empathize with the people that are on your team. You have to be, since you want to be, transparent, open, put it on there, put it all out there, be integrity-based. That really helps for your people to know that you're real, that you care, that you're, and when you go and ask for help. Again, I just think it takes a huge amount of self-awareness to know, I am behind the 8 ball here, and I'm absolutely going to need to have these folks who are super intelligent around me come out and help with the thing that we need to get done. And I think them knowing that, not enough leaders do that. It drives me bonkers. It's like, you don't have to be all things. You don't have to know all things. But you do have to open up to say, I don't know it all. I can't do it all. And let's use all of your strengths and talents to let's just do this as a team. It just doesn't happen enough. I really think that's where a lot of cultures fail.
Absolutely. It's a great summary you just said, because, leaders are only as strong as their teams and their teams and so on, right? So it goes, so you surround yourself by stronger people, where you have weakness as a leader, you hire people who have more intelligence. You got to be comfortable with that. And that's a good thing. And the other thing too, that you mentioned is, no one's perfect. No one's perfect. And so it's actually really good, like the example I use, to go back and analyze your own mistakes. And it's okay to criticize yourself. You'll heal. I healed. And you go onward and upward. But the time to take to recognize that you're not perfect is one where you go, you know what, I am here on the planet trying to do great things with great people. That's what the goal was as of me as a leader. And the recognition is that when people see there's a self-evaluation of the leader, that they're become real, so to speak, it's really significant, and it makes them feel touchable. And I tell you, there are events in my career, Heather, where I would go down in my suit or in my business, attire, and this is when I used to wear suits, but now I'm business attire, and I would get on the line, and the production line, we're doing an event, or we're preparing things to drive traffic to an event we're having, and we might hire outside contractors, and then all of a sudden I show up and I'm rolling my sleeves up and I'm helping out, and when you find out nothing's beneath you and you show that to your team, there's a lot, and by the way, I didn't think about it, but there's a lot of respect. So self-evaluation, self-awareness, self-realization, getting down and dirty and getting to know your team and doing their jobs, and helping them out to their jobs, not doing their jobs, but helping them do their jobs. It shows that you are there to make them successful. And I will tell you, in my experience, that comes back to spades to the entire organization. The culture, which our goal is to create a positive culture, and it comes back to getting results. And that is a strong leader, in my opinion.
Love it. Love it. Well, I usually ask everybody to give a summary, but I think in what you just said, you've summarized what it is that the things that the listeners and leaders who may be struggling right now need to focus on, rolling up those sleeves and showing up, having that vulnerability to ask for help, enlisting them, recognizing them and meeting them where they are, and making sure that you take that time to emotionally connect with that team, not just about business, but about their lives. These are some very key tenets of leadership, but also what we do to create more engaged employees, more loyal people that are loyal to us. In most cases, employees and people aren't loyal to organizations as much as they are to the leaders that lead them. So I think you've demonstrated that. And again, I really thank you for being on the show. We're going to wrap up now. And
absolutely.
If you could tell everybody how, just one way they can get a hold of you if they have any follow-up questions, which they might have, because this is some really good stuff. And I know you have a lot in your toolkit that you could share. So just the one way that you can tell the listeners to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. So happy to share any more content. I believe in paying it forward. If someone has some questions, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the best way. I'm Robert Pepper. There's probably a couple Robert Peppers. That's Salt and Pepper, Pepper, for the spelling. So it's LinkedIn Robert Pepper, and there's a 1 after it. And I think someone else actually grabbed the Robert Pepper only, so I had to add a number on it. So that's me. You can get me on LinkedIn. Send me your questions. Some of my other contact information is on there as well, but that will ensure an immediate response back.
That's awesome. And what I'll do too, for the listeners, I'll make sure to, when I put the show notes together, which will come out when the episode comes out on my website, there'll be more about your bio, and then the way that you want them to contact you will be on there as well. So this has
fantastic,
been very,
Heather.
I appreciate it. This has been a very successful call. And I mean, I could probably talk to you for hours and hours, because there's so much I think you could teach me and everybody else that's listening in. We all learn from one another, remembering that leadership excellence is a journey that none of us are perfect, even if some of us are stronger than others in this area. It is about continuous improvement. It's about self-evaluation, as Rob just told us. So just let's focus on doing that and being leaders with heart. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. You can grab the show notes by visiting customerfanatics.com. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter.